Hi friends, it's Sarah from rufflesandrainboots.com, and today I'm going to teach you how to make your own pattern. I'll be making this Santa, and if you would like to learn, just boop, stick around. Now, this is a bit longer than my normal tutorials, but just as with those, please give this video a like so I know you're here. It really helps with that YouTube algorithm. So this is between 14 and 18 inches tall, depending on how you build it. Comes with its own sound effects. Jingle, jingle. Now I'm going to show you the arms that we're making for this are going to be similar to ones I've shared before. So you can have synchronous arm movement, you can have posable arm movements, you can have like one up and one down, you can pose them to where they're holding something and bringing into the front of the body. I also last week shared the shoe-based video tutorial I like for the lightweight gnomes, and because this guy is what I'm going to be building on a cone to teach you how to make your own pattern, these boot bases are perfect. I get asked to use Dollar Tree supplies, so I am going to be using some. I'll call out which ones I'm using. The first thing I'm using is the 6.9-inch styrofoam cone from the Dollar Tree. There it goes. I'm going to be using fleece, however. I find it's the best fabric when you're doing this. Also, I'm going to be using white curly doll hair, which is a special brand of happiness. 14 gauge wire, 2 washers, and any arms you would like. So I got these sent to me. I'm going to use them. They're Dollar Tree foam hair rollers, but we're going to talk about alternatives. So as I mentioned, we're going to be using these bases that we made last week. I'll link that tutorial in the iCard above and put it in the description box below. So we're actually going to start with that. You need your cone and your base to determine how tall you want to make your boots. Mine were 2.5 inches wide by 7.5 inches long. I put the right sides together, used a detail glue gun, and glued the short ends of that rectangle together. I held it in place with clips because I was using a thick felt and I wanted to make sure it really got a good hold. I used my jelly pen in white to trace the bottom of my bases before I painted them with chalk paint. All right, so once they're ready, I'm basically flipping out the shaft that we made, and I'm just pulling that seam to make sure that it's solid. So then you just slip this over you can go under, through the bottom of the shoe or over the top, but you're just going to make sure that you have like this edge. You see this here? You want this edge because I've been testing these for more than 18 months and will tell you glue on plaster will fail, but when you glue these together, they won't. So we're going to put glue all along the outside and on the plaster and pop that bottom on, pulling down that shaft so all the white is covered. So you can see here, there you go. Now that is secure. You can also sew those on. So if you're like me and got a little hectic with the glue gun, you just take your heat gun, put it on, goes right away. Now, in order to make the toe of our shoe, you can use a wood bead, a pom-pom, aluminum foil rolled up, but I'm using this 2-year-old garland that I got from Hobby Lobby. But the trick is to put glue on the front of the fabric as well as the base because you don't want it shifting forward. We only need it in the front. So I'm going to show you two views of this so that everybody can make sure you're just going to push down the front of the boot into where your dowel or your pencil is, and then you're going to fold in those edges. I'm going to show you in just a second. This one is the overview for everybody. I'm just going to hot glue it right along that middle piece and clip it because again, we're using the thicker fleece. So here you go, close up. We're rolling that edge after we flip down the center, and then we're going to hot glue straight up and then clip it in place. And now we have 2 base boots here. All right, so this measurement doesn't matter, but you can see it here on the screen. You need to know how high your legs were in order to determine the length of your pant. I'm making a primitive style gnome and I'll be ruching the legs, so I am definitely going to need just shorter than normal, sort of like shorts instead of pants. And I just, again, only wanted part of my dowel showing, so I'm going to measure the width as the widest part of my comb. Okay, and you can do that. Add 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch for a seam allowance, and then you can measure your height, and mine ended up being 5 inches. So I have a 10.5 inch by 5 inch for this Dollar Tree cone. Now, when you're inserting the legs, do make sure that you put it just back of center. So regardless of whether your gnome's shoes are pointing out or straight ahead, just make sure you're putting them sort of where a human body's would be, like just back of center. And the reason is, look, this thing is solid. No matter what I put on it and drop it from high, it's going to stay upright. We're never going to have any tipping. All right, so front, we're putting the right sides together on our pant. We're doing a thin bead of hot glue along that shorter edge and just pressing it and leaving it. Now, while that's setting, I'm going to just use a pencil to mark on the legs where I put them through. And then that way, when I finish these pants, it's going to be easy to reassemble. So I'm going to put the seam just right of center, and in the center make my seam my inseam. So mine ended up being 1.5 inches for this, and then I'm just going to glue the two pant legs together. Now I know it looks like they're not even, but I promise they are. You're just going to repeat that inseam with the other side, let the hot glue set, and then you're going to flip them right sides out, just like this. And now, before we assemble everything, we're going to have to put the seam in the middle and then slide on our legs, pull down the pants, and then put hot glue into the holes that we made earlier and slide that right onto our legs. Now, I like to add a little bit of hot glue on the underside. Do make sure you let that dry completely before moving on. And when it dries, you just pull up the pants. See? All right, so here is where I used a piece of embroidery thread in a contrasting color. I chose white, and I just made a running stitch all along the bottom of each pant leg, tied it off, add a little dollop of hot glue, and just made sure that they had a nice scrunch to them because, again, I wanted a primitive style. I don't like looking at the bottom of the cone. This is absolutely optional, but I tuck polyfill in to give it a belly by creating a channel of hot glue on either side and just stuffing in a bit of polyfill for the belly, and of course I had to do it for the booty. I can't stop giggling. That is me cracking up while I'm doing this. I'm not even kidding you. It cracks me up when these things come together. I guess it's good to like your job, right? Okay, so this is me just putting the pants on all the way, showing you that look at that. There's a nice rotund piece. For arms, I normally just like using fabric and polyfill and wire, but these were sent to me, so I'm going to be using these. There's multiple styles, multiple thickness. All I'm going to do is rip out this wire by just cutting it. You can cut it with scissors, but it's really dinky, and you have to glue them to the body, which they aren't that solid, so I'm going to measure them, cut them down. Now look, I leave room on that top and the bottom. So what you'll see, I leave room on the left there. The shorter bit is about 3/4 of an inch, and that's for my hand. But the top here, I leave an inch, at least an inch, because we're going to tuck that up, and when we make our faux jacket, it's going to help. Now for the arms, you are going to need washers, and it doesn't matter what size, just make sure that they fit on the wire that you're using. And so what we're going to do is we're going to make it so we have these arms that will not destroy our cone, because if you just do this and start messing around with those arms, it'll rip through these cones. So we're going to slide the arm on, and we're going to create the bottom edge by flipping down the end, and we're going to stuff that right up into the foam. So now that space is for our hand. And then we're just going to measure. So you're going to put the arm against the body wherever you want them, and then you're going to measure the exact opposite side. I always add a little because I'd rather be a little long than short, so mine ended up being about 14.5 inches for this Dollar Tree cone. Before I assemble, I'm going to slip one washer onto the arm that I'm going to use to poke through the body. So again, I'm just measuring twice, kind of cutting once thing. I'm going to poke this right through the styrofoam cone, all the way through. Now, if you're using a thinner gauge wire, you may want to pre-poke it with a dowel or something. But before you put on the arm, you're just going to put on that other washer, slip on the arm, and do the same exact thing by bending over the edge, cutting it off, and then tucking it up under into that foam or into the polyfill arm, whatever you're using. You can see I'm just going to get that done. And now I'm just going to glue on little wood rounds for the hands. You can use mittens. You can use the ends of gloves at the Dollar Tree, the little finger parts to make mittens. I'm just going to scrunch up that open fabric around so it looks nice and finished. For the nose, I am using the Dollar Tree shoe liner in sort of a neutral color, balling up some polyfill and tucking that in. I'm going to go ahead and twist it in the back and then cover it again with the other edge. Make sure it's the right size and then tie it off with some twine. You have to leave the length of the nose because I'm going to tie this on. So the doll hair is the slickest, slimiest. It's so beautiful. Look at it when you pull it out of the... So pretty. When you touch it, it turns into a million slinkies. It's not the easiest stuff to work with. So I recommend, number one, leaving the ties on the nose. And number two, making a piece of felt. So this is the thick white felt. I'm just making a U. Now here's the thing. On the body of the gnome, the beard at the base will spread out. So instead of just making it all the same, add an extra row down here that can be short, doesn't matter, just add a bit down at the bottom before you start building up the rest of the gnome beard, because this stuff will separate and then you'll see like holes and it's not very pretty. So once you have that base on, now you can start gluing it on and then picking it up, letting gravity do the work, and just making sure you're getting some longer pieces in here, okay? I sped this up. No kidding. This took me at least 25 minutes. It always takes me a long time when I work with this stuff. The look is beautiful, but it's a pain. Like, no lie. You can use faux fur, you can use yarn, you can use moss, whatever you want. But this stuff, it really looks pretty. We're going to set it aside after we cover the whole felt piece, but we're not done with that doll hair. So now we're moving on to the jacket. Super easy jacket. Give you some tips. Measure the widest part of the belly, and then you're going to just cut it however high you want it, where it covers the shoulders of those arms. And then just cut that into a rectangle. I do a really bad job. Look, it's really wonky. But I'm going to cut that into a trapezoid. Now the measurements aren't going to matter. You're going to do it for your body, but mine's about 12 by, what is this? 8.5, 9, I'm not real sure. But that isn't the important part. The important part is it goes all the way around and you have some to loop over if you want that look. If you don't want that look, you can cut it on the body, all right? So in order to get it on the body, we're going to wrap it around, cut an X into our fleece, and slide that on over our arm. I'm going to pin that in place so it stays there without being tugged, right? We don't want it to be tugged out of position. I'm going to wrap it around the other side, pin the bottom down here, and then I'm going to find out where just above, again, just above that shoulder, where that place is, and then I'm going to cut an X into that fleece. And then I'm going to flip up my arms and just tuck it in right there. Now, there's two ways you can do this. So I'm going to have that extra fabric over that jacket. But if you don't want that, if you have a shorter hat or you're trying to make it look like a seamless look, you will actually leave your sleeve tops tucked into those slits. And I'm going to show you that in just a second. So when you're putting on the top of the jacket, do make sure you're moving the arms up and down to make sure everything is sitting right. And remember when I said I did a wonky cut and I'm just going to cut on the jacket or cut on the body? You can do that. It's really easy. So I'm going to pin on my beard in order to also get an idea where all my trim pieces are going to go. So you can see I haven't cut down my nose extra fabric yet, but I'm just going to tie that on to get an idea. Now I'm using Sherpa fleece or it's also called lamb's wool fleece, for all of my trim. So I'm going to have a few pieces. The first is the jacket placard and the jacket base, and then boot and sleeve. So I will say the best part of this stuff is it hides a lot of sins. We're just going to cut it, pull off the extras, and then glue the fabric backings together so it looks nice and finished. And again, I like to use pins to make sure I'm tugging and moving everything that can be tugged and moved while keeping everything in place. So now I'm just going to be gluing down the back. I glue down the very back near his rear end first, then I glue up the back here. You see that extra fabric around the tops of the sleeves? That's good. We don't need to cut that off. We're just going to glue down the inside of the fabric, or I'm sorry, the inside of the jacket. And again, if you want the jacket to meet in the middle, you can absolutely cut it that way. Just get it on the body first, and that helps you like develop your pattern, right? So get your pattern piece and copy it before moving on and gluing everything down. All right, so here I'm just going to glue down this part here and then remove my pins. And now I'm going to tell you, so here's the part. I chose to bring mine out, so I'm gluing down this part to the body and pulling out that top part of the sleeve that we made. But again, you can do the opposite and glue the sleeve in and your arms will still move. So here you can see I'm just putting on my little trim, the placard, and then the base piece for his little jacket. And then I'll move to the arms. When I totally forgot to do the boots, but I get to those later. They get done. I'm going to glue on the beard, and you're not done with the beard. Remember when I said you're not done with the beard? You're so not done with the beard. We're going to pull down the fabric or the curls out of the way so we can trim our nose, extra pieces back here, and then tie it on in its final position. I always use a pin, just to make sure. Oh, there I realize, hey, I forgot to do the boots. So now they get done. We're going to make our hat. There's no nose glued on or anything yet. We can still move it in case you measure wrong. Don't worry. But all we're going to do is measure the widest part above the shoulders. And I'm going to give you a hat pattern here that works every single time, no matter what, with a cone gnome. So again, we're going to measure all the way around. You can use a measuring tape for this as well. But I'm just going to add, again, 1/2 inch to a 3/4 of an inch, make my mark. You can make a 9-inch hat like I'm doing here, which is just measuring 9 inches up and cutting a big rectangle. That's it. All right, so once you get that cut, you're going to put right sides together, and then you're going to cut a rise, which means you're going to pin your fabric because fleece moves. We're going to start 2 inches up from the brim of our hat and go all the way and cut to about a 1/2 inch away from the fold. Don't go less than 1/4. You see that nice little flat part? Now I'm going to foreshadow here and tell you I meant to go ahead and hem that, and I totally forgot. I'm going to start gluing the right sides together, starting with the rise, then moving to the tip, and then gluing the entire length of that triangle together. I do end up hemming this at the end because I did not want to use any trim at all on his little hat. All right, so once that's all set, you're going to pull apart that seam, make sure there's got no holes. Then you're going to flip it right side out, poke out the tip with a dowel or pencil. Now, when you go to put it on, flip up that bottom rise. You see how it's all tucked up in there? It works perfectly. You see what the back looks like? And it gives us a base for our hat to be nice and stiff. Now, you don't pull it over the nose yet because we're not done with the front of this guy. Remember all this extra happiness? We're going to start putting all the extra happiness. Now, I highly recommend you protect the area next to your beard, and all you're going to do is add glue, add curliness, poke it with a stick. Like, that's it. And then you just do that all the way up so that your hat, it looks like there's so much beard coming out of that hat, right? I like that look. If you don't like that look, skip it. But I like to raise up the nose as well, tuck some under there, see? And then I'm going to do the other side all along that extra nose. And then, now this is the fun part. It's also fresh. You see all those extra pieces hanging down? We're going to get to those. Remove your protective tapes, stand them up, shake them about, and start trimming. That's it. You see all the little curls falling off? We're going to use those for stuffing something later. So here is where I remembered, I forgot to hem my hat. So I hemmed my hat and then glued it all the way around. I start in the back and then just glue the arms, over the arms, and then I do the nose. You'll see. Just make sure that nose is right where I want it. And then I sewed on some little bells right to each boot. And I also did the edge of the hat, or the tip of the hat. And then he's all done. So what do you think of him? Will you make your own pattern this way? As a reminder, I will put the shoe base tutorial down below. Thank you so much for being here. And here is a Holiday Gnomes playlist for you.